What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So in today's episode, what we're going to talk about is basic hydroponics. Okay, now this is going to be the most basic method of hydroponics. It's called the Kratky method. And in today's video, what I'm going to show you guys is how to start the Kratky method, what are some of the downsides of the Kratky method versus some of the other bigger methods out there, as well as how to refill your containers in the Kratky method. Now, the Kratky method, for those of you who don't know, it's pretty much the set and forget method, okay? And what happens is the plant, instead of having an air stone or some kind of aeration, the plant itself will actually aerate its own roots, okay? So if you guys can see this is some lettuce. Alright, so you can see those roots right there, and you can see how hairy those roots right there, and that's what's giving this lettuce its oxygen, right? Another thing too is I'm going to show you guys, you don't need any special containers, you don't need anything different to grow hydroponics inside your house, okay? The only thing that you need is you need some sort of reservoir or some sort of container that holds water. For Kratky, we really like these mason jars. They work excellent. The only thing I will say about the mason jar setup though is you might want to use a sock, therefore you don't get light leaks inside of your container because you don't want algae to grow. And you want to keep your roots nice and healthy. But if you want to grow hydroponics in a 6-quart tub, you can do that. This plant right here, guys, this is a Brussels sprout plant, okay? I grew this in a 6-quart container. 6 quarts, that's all it took, right? And I keep bashing against the lights there, but hopefully you guys can see that on camera. And originally, when I built this thing, the reason we have aluminum foil is because I built it with the idea of having three separate plants. But I realized as this thing started growing and getting bigger that it wasn't feasible to have more plants in this setup. Now, if I was growing something like lettuce or something like that, then we could probably just do three different lettuces in this container, and it would probably work. But because this is so big, it's actually outgrowing this container. Okay, so the reason I have this out is we need to refill this guy or girl. Okay, the water is kind of murky, and we need to give it some more nutrients and everything like that. And then same thing with this. All right. This is some, I think it's dark Loa lettuce. Now you can kind of see at the very top here, the lettuce is kind of turning a little purple. It's actually meant to do that, so nothing wrong with the lettuce here. And in this container right here, this is my germination container. And I have some romaine lettuce and some butter crunch lettuce. And what I want to do is I want to show you guys how to actually start a Kratky setup. And honestly, guys, this is the easiest method of hydroponics there is, okay? You fill up a container with some water, you pH it, you put your nutrients in it, then you pH it, okay? And then you put it in some light and you let it grow. That's the basics of this method. Okay, now for nutrient line, for this particular setup, I'm going to be using General Hydroponics. I like these nutrients. I've got some other nutrients that I've been using as well, but I figure for my Kratky setups, I tend to use the General Hydroponics. Okay, for pH, we got some General Hydroponics pH down. Okay, if you are getting into hydroponics, or if you do want to to start doing this stuff yourself, get some pH equipment. Okay, General Hydroponics makes excellent pH. I got this stuff like a long time ago, and you can see I barely used the pH up, and I've used a little bit of the pH down, but I also run DWC buckets, so it requires a little bit more pH, okay? You're gonna want a ppm or a TDS meter, see how much nutrients are in your water, okay? And if you do get the general hydroponics pH stuff, okay, it even comes with its own like pH test liquid or whatever, okay? And this stuff works well. I actually started using this before I invested in a better pH meter. Now, the only thing that's kind of optional, and I have to use this, and I'll tell you why in a second, is Cal Magic, all right? This is calcium and magnesium. The reason I have to use this is because I'm using RO water, okay? So there's a couple of different waters you can use. You can use tap water, you can use filtered water, you can use distilled water, and you can use reverse osmosis water. The most purest water that you can get is reverse osmosis, okay? Now, with reverse osmosis, you do have to buy a reverse osmosis filter. I own one, okay? My wife actually bought me one for Christmas, and I'm very grateful. And that's what this jug right here is filled up with, okay? Now, this has like 0 ppm, okay? So ppm is parts per million, and it's pretty much, it's kind of the standard of like what is all in your water, okay? For instance, my tap water here, if I was using tap water, my ppm would be roughly about 220. With reverse osmosis water, it's down to about 5 to 7, depending on depending on the meter, I guess. The meter is not always perfectly right, but it gives you a general idea. Okay, so because we don't have any calcium and magnesium in our water, we have to use calcium and magnesium, okay? So pretty simple, basic stuff, right? Okay, we got some pH stuff, we got some nutrients. So if you're new to hydroponics, I would say the only thing that you might have to invest in, okay, invest in your nutrients and invest in some pH stuff, okay? pH meter, pH liquid, it doesn't matter, whatever you want to use it. However, what I would say, if you're thinking about a pH meter, think about a pretty good pH meter, okay? Invest in a little bit of money in a good pH meter. For instance, I'm using this Afra, I think that's how you pronounce it. This is about a $100 meter. Yes, it's $100, but yes, it works, you know. I do have a cheaper meter, and I'm gonna be honest, it's completely junk. I've never used it. Okay, so that's the only thing. And then the next thing you're going to need is you're going to need some plants, right? You're going to need some reservoirs. So what all can you use as reservoirs? Like I said, you can use a bucket, you can use a tote, a mason jar, you can use anything. If it holds water, then, and you can hang up your plant, great. Okay, the only thing that we gotta do is we have to suspend the roots of our plant in the nutrients. Okay, so let's pretend right now that we have some plants and stuff like that, and well, the plants are drinking the water, right? We need to replenish all of this this water, this nutrients that these plants are taking up because they're growing, and you know we can't let them. We don't want them to die. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, what I like to do is I come over here, and I generally use the coffee cup method, okay, because this coffee cup fits perfectly with these 3-inch net pots. Speaking of net pots, if you are thinking about the mason jar setup, if you get the wide mouth mason jar, okay, 3-inch net pots fit in here perfectly. If you get the regular mouth mason jars, I believe you want the 2-inch net pots. Don't quote me on the 2-inch net pots, but I think I'm correct on that. I do know the wide mouth though, 3-inch net pots, 100%, they fit right in there. They're perfect. That's why I use them so much. All right, So what we have? Well, we have a little bit of nutrients in there. We have some dirty water, right? We have some dirty, nasty, funky water. All right, I'm gonna dump this. All right, I don't want to give my lettuce some funky, nasty water. All right, so come over here. I'm gonna dump it, and I'm just gonna rinse out the container. All right, I'm not gonna worry about. Super cleaning this because it's gonna get funky again. All right, it's not that big of a deal. All right, container is empty, right? Well, all right. So what I like to do personally, is I'll pick up my plant again. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want to find out where those roots are going to be in the container. So I know from looking at the roots in here, I know I need to fill up this container to about 1.5. Okay, so I want 1.5 of water, and that will give the roots plenty of air and oxygen and everything like that. So we take our RO water, one and a half. All right. Now we're going to do our nutrients. How we do nutrients for general hydroponics. To be honest, I don't really measure. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to get our nutrients. So we got our general hydroponic nutrient right here. All right, this is a 3-part mixture. We use all 3 parts. You want to start with micro, then you want to go to the green, and then you want to use this. Okay. How do I do this? Well, you can measure and you can do all this stuff and you can measure it out. But I've been doing this a little while now, and what I generally do is I know the container, right? Like, we're not using the full mason jar. This is not going to be a full mason jar. So I'm not going to use all of this. I'm just going to fill this up enough where my nutrients, or the ppm, hits about 400 to 500. That's it. I'm not going to do what's recommended or anything like that. I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. Now, if you want to measure and all that stuff, then, or read the feeding chart on the back of your containers here, by all means do it. I just choose not to do it because it's really tedious. All right, so that's all I do. All right. So we have our micro in, and we want to make sure our little syringe here is all clear. It's all cleaned out. All right. We're also going to get our TDS meter or ppm meter out. We're going to have to use that. And if I check the ppm of this, that's a little too high. It's about 400 right now, and I haven't added anything else. So yeah, I wasted a little bit of water, but that's okay. If you watched my last video, you know that I'll just dilute it. I may have to dilute it again. Yep, got to dilute it about one more time. And I want it about 100 something. Alright, so it's about 144. That's about perfect. Alright. We want to use our green, which is the grow. Yeah, the grow series. Alright. Now we know, because we've used these nutrients, this is going to raise your ppm sky high, and this is going to raise your ppm sky high. To grow, it does raise your ppm, but it doesn't raise it. It doesn't raise it crazy. Okay, so we're not going to use all of it. We're just going to use some, about half. Then I'm going to check the ppm. ppm's good. Now we're going to use a little bit of this, a little bit of the pink, not a lot. Now remember, we got to use CalMag because we're running RO water. Not a lot of this stuff. About 4 little squirts. Or 4 drops. That's what I generally do. Alright. Cut that. ppm is a little too hot. It's okay. Damn. How the fuck are you still in the 7? Alright, so the ppm is about 500, and that's generally where I kind of like it for lettuce, between like 450, 533. This one is 534, 539, right around in that area. Pretty good. So next thing I'm going to do is pH it. Alright. So get our pH meter. Like to shake it off from the cap. Turn it on. Okay. And I like to keep this light on. So it's got a button for the light. And we just stick it in there. Okay, and I wait. So the pH right now is it's about 563, 5.6, 5.7. It's kind of going up and down a little bit. I'm going to give it a good stir. Sometimes giving it a good stir kind of... Alright, 5.8. That is absolutely perfect. You want your pH between 5.5 and 6.5, okay, on most of your plants. Alright, so 5.8 is, that's right around the area that I generally like it. Next thing I'm going to do is we're going to take our plant, right? We're going to stick it in here. Okay, plant has plenty of air roots. It's good. I mean, it's nice and clean. The next thing I do is we take our sock and we have a label on. I always label all my plants, and the way I do my labels is I label I label what the plant is and if it has any special like inputs such as flow or orca, and I always put the date on it. So you can see the last date that I refilled this was 12/14 last year. Okay, so we're gonna put a sock on it. And it don't have to be perfect. All right, and then we get masking tape. I prefer using masking tape and just like a small magic marker. Works pretty good for labels. All I'm going to do is write Dark Lola and today's date. Today is January the 15th. Okay, got our label. Put a label on the sock like that, and she's good to go. Put this back under the grow light and watch her take off. The next thing that we're going to do is we have to do this big container right here, and this is another big project. Now this one's kind of a pain in the butt to do, I'm not gonna lie, but you can see the massive roots. Okay, look at that. You can see those massive roots right there. I mean, they are just, okay. So the way that we do this one is we cannot use the coffee cup for this particular plant. It's just too big. So I'm going to utilize the sink. I was trying to utilize the sink there. Would not work. Instead, I just utilized 2 mason jars. That should work. Okay, so we got, on here we got Orca. We got, the last time this has been refilled is the 10th. Okay, so that's only been like 5 days ago. This thing is drinking water. It's insane how much water this is drinking. Alright, got our label, and we'll have to make a new one. But the same process, right? Go fill it up. And important for bigger plants is you need to really look at those roots. And if you want to know how I just have a string on my my little greenhouse or whatever, and that's kind of how I keep the stock from folding over. But I like to give this thing a lot of root space. Okay, so looks good to me. Might fill it up just a little bit more here. And because this is a bigger container, I can use a little bit more nutrients than I would if it was, let's say, a small mason jar or something. Okay, this is a little bit more water, so the ppm on this is not going to be it's not going to be easy to overboard it on the ppm. We're still going to test it and everything, but it's just not going to be that big of a deal. And stir this stuff in really good, okay? We want this stuff nice and stirred in. Again, about half of this. want to use a little bit of bloom. Not a lot, about half. We want to check our ppm before we add our CalMag. It's about 507 without the CalMag. It's pretty good. I did about 6 droplets. And if we notice anything wrong going on with the plant, such as calcium deficiency or magnesium deficiency, we can always add in more CalMag later. Alright, and the final product that we're going to add to this container, because we have been using Orca on our roots, I want to continue using Orca. Okay, if you don't know what Orca is, it's a mycorrhiza. I'm butchering that pronunciation, I know I am. Basically, it's beneficial bacteria, okay? So, there's a couple of different ways to do hydroponics. You can either do like a sterile method, or you can add what's called beneficial bacteria into your water, okay? And the beneficial bacteria, it's supposed to kill the bad stuff, okay? So, it's supposed to kind of take over, right? So, I use beneficials. I've been trying it on a couple of different my setups. So far, so good. But this particular setup actually uses it, and I want to continue using it. Okay. Now, I do read the directions when applying this. So pretty much for 1 gallon of water, we use a ½ milliliter of Orca, and we can use three times as much. But since we're not using a gallon of water, okay, I don't want to use too much of this stuff. So I'm going to use a clean syringe here. And this is a milliliter, okay, this is a small syringe. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to use like one of these. And that's it. Check the ppm. The Orca should not raise your ppm. I'm reading about 537. So 537 to me is about perfect. I don't know if you guys can kind of tell in the video, but it's about 537. So yeah, I can live with 537 ppm. And now we can put the plant back on, we add our label, and then these 2 plants are done, right? We got our tape. So, Brussels sprouts, the date, and if we added the input, which is Orca, done. These 2 are done. Next thing I'm going to do is put these under the grow lights, and I actually need to put this back up, tie it back up. So now that you saw how I've refilled my containers, let's pretend you're just starting out, okay? You got some germinations going, and how do I start the process? How do I begin to grow something like this, right? Well, first thing I do is I take my container or my reservoir. This is a wide mouth mason jar, and this is a 3-inch net cup, okay? The 3-inch net cups fit perfectly in these wide mouth mason jars, as you can tell. Okay, I grab my water, and the very first thing I do, because these are seedlings, all right, we fill up our container, and we want the water at the very, very end of that net cup, okay? So I'm gonna get closer to the camera to show you guys. But we want that water at the very end. So you can see, if we pick it up, it's gonna drip. The reason we want this is because the medium that we're using is rock wool. Rock wool, if it's not moist, it dries up. If your plants or your seedlings do not have roots yet, what's going to happen is the rock wool is going to dry up, your plant is going to dry up, and it's going to die. Okay, how do I know this? Well, it's happened plenty of times, okay? So just remember, whatever container or whatever reservoir that you're starting this in, make sure that your water is touching the bottom of that net cup. Okay, if it's a little bit over, it's not a big deal. You don't want to drown your plant, but you don't have to be as picky, okay? Just make sure that your water is there, so that way your medium doesn't dry up. Now, if you're not using rock wool, maybe you're using perlite or you're using cocoa, unfortunately, I cannot help you. I just use rock wool for this specific system. I am going to be trying some different techniques with perlite and cocoa in the near future. So subscribe to the channel if you're interested in that. But for right now, we're going to be using rock wool, and rock wool works. Okay. So we have two different plants here. We have some romaine lettuce and we have some butter crunch. Okay. And then you can see I used RO water and I used Orca. And we also have the date on here. So today is the 15th of January, and I started this on the 11th. Okay, so these plants are only 4 days old. Okay, from germination, you can see how tall they are. Really good. I mean, the roots are really good. I don't know if the Orca has helped out a lot, but I mean, I can honestly say that these things are going strong. Unfortunately, it looks like I have about 20 different lettuces right here, and I can't house 20 different lettuces. So we're gonna have to kind of pick and choose which one we want to save. That's the unfortunate thing. I wish I had the space for everything, but I don't. Okay. So next thing we're gonna do before we even do any transportation, let's just take this out. We're gonna figure out our nutrient line. Okay. So because we used Orca for the germination process, we are going to be using Orca again, okay? So we know we have to use Orca. And for this, I'm probably just going to stick to the general hydroponics nutrient line that I've been using in this video right here, just so I don't have to get out the other nutrients. But you can use any kind of nutrient line that you want to use. Now, very important. You do not want to, you don't want to give your seedlings too much nutrients. You can burn them, okay? You can kill them with nutrients. I've done that in the past. I've screwed up in the past. I've actually done it to a bigger plant in the past, and it sucked because it was one of my Brussels sprout plants, and I nuked it. I did. I killed it. So we don't want to do that, okay? We want to actually be a little bit careful here. When dealing with the bigger plants, I'm a little less careful, but with these smaller seedlings, we do want to kind of be careful and be cognizant of the how much nutrients that we're giving these plants, okay? So my nutrients, what I'm aiming to give this seedling is 300 to 400 ppm, okay? Something right around in that general area. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, okay? So I'm going to use this milliliter, 1 milliliter syringe right here, and we are not filling this thing up, okay? The micro and the bloom, it raises your ppm sky high. We don't really want that, okay? So we just got a little bit of nutrients, okay? And I just put a little bit in here, right? I'm just going to stir it up. On some of this stuff, guys, less is more. Okay, just remember that on your nutrients, less is kind of more. You don't want to give them plain water, but at the same time, you don't really need to. You don't need to overfeed these plants. Okay, they're going to be fine. Just give them some nutrients, give them something to eat, something to drink, and some light, and they should do okay for you. Again, we're just giving it a little bit of that green, okay? Not a lot. We're gonna do a good stir here. Now, before we add any of the other ones, what I like to do is I always like to check the ppm, okay? Just to see where we're at. I'm at 285 ppm, 285, okay? So that's about where I kind of want to be. Because as soon as I add this and the CalMag, it's going to jack that ppm up a little bit, okay? And we don't, like I said, we don't want to overfeed this thing. All right, so we just give it a little bit. That's all. Okay, now we're going to do the CalMag. Now, if you're not using RO water, you can probably skip the CalMag. Okay, if you're using tap water, or if you're or just like filtered water, you can probably skip the CalMag. You might want to check the calcium and magnesium levels in your city. Okay, for myself, we have really high CalMag or calcium and magnesium in our water where I live. So with the RO water though, because the RO will strip everything, we have to kind of add it in. So this is kind of an extra step. Not everyone has an RO filter. I realize that. Okay, but if you do, then you know, you got to add your calcium and magnesium. And the only thing I'm doing is I'm adding like 4 or 5 drops. That's it. We're not overdoing it. Okay, I added like 4 or 5 drops. That's good enough. And then I will check on the plants. Okay, I'll check on them as they're growing to make sure that they're getting all the nutrients that they need. Okay. Again, we're going to check the ppm. 445. 445 is about. I'm happy with 445. And like I said in my last segment, the Orca, we should not have to add any. The Orca, it should not raise the ppm. We are going to use another syringe though, because I don't want to contaminate anything. Okay, and I'm just filling it up a little bit. So it's about half a syringe for a gallon. This is not a gallon, so we're going to do like 4 or 5 drops. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'll do 5 drops. 5 drops. That's it. Okay. So we don't add a lot. Stir it up. Next thing I need to do is I need to check the pH. Okay. We're going to turn the pH meter on, turn on that light, shake it out. Okay. And then we're going to stir it real good. Stir, stir, stir. And we're at about 5.91 right here. I don't know if you guys can see that on camera. 5.88, 5.86. And it's going down, so you can see the numbers right there. Okay, so we're at 5.81. That's good pH. I don't have to use any pH down, which is fantastic. Yeah, we're at 5.79. I can do 5.79. Okay. Shake it out real good. We don't want to touch it or anything. All right, you don't want to touch the thing inside. Don't want to do anything. Put the cap back on. All right, that's done. We got our reservoir, we got our nutrients, we got our cup here. Next thing we got to do is add the plant, right? Okay, so let me move some of this stuff out of the way here. And how I do this is, now I've already kind of done this step, but how I do this generally is I take some rock wool. All right, I get these little rock wool cubes. You don't have to get the big ones. And all I do is I make a slit where the plant hole is at the top here, okay? And I make a slit so it kind of opens up like a V. And I really like to do this method with younger seedling plants, because what we can do is we could just open up that V and stick our plant in there and be good to go. Now, this is the painful part, I'm not gonna lie. You know, when you germinate a bunch of plants and you see them all, and you just, for me, I want to keep everything that I germinate, just because it's kind of a pain in the butt. So we're just gonna take the rock wool, and I'm just gonna split it. And I got probably, I don't know, I probably got a good 10 seedlings here. All right, so we're gonna start pulling them. And we're going to figure out the one that has a pretty decent root on it. Okay, we don't have to be super selective. They all look pretty healthy. And if you wanted to, you could probably plant multiple inside of your container or setup. I choose not to do that specifically on Kratky, because it's, you know, the more that you have, the more that you kind of have to babysit and all that. So I'm gonna choose this little guy. This one looks good. We have a nice root on there. Okay, it's not super big, but the plant itself looks nice and healthy. Okay, we got a nice root. And what I'm gonna do, so I'm gonna take this rock wool cube. Okay, and I'm gonna open up that V right there. Okay, and I'm gonna stuff that plant in there. Okay, if it can go in there. And now we got the root at the bottom. We got the plant, and we're just gonna stick it. We're gonna stick it in there. All right. And what I like to try and do, if it does have a root, is I like to go ahead and try and get it through one of these holes. You don't have to, but if you can, it's a good thing, because the plant can start uptaking its nutrients and stuff like that. Okay, that's it, guys. That is it. That's 100%. Okay, and the last thing I do, honestly, is, because of light leaks and all that, we take some leca, or some clay pebbles, as some people like to call it, and I put this stuff around the holes and stuff in the net pot. That way, you know, we don't get any of those crazy light leaks, and we can keep this container nice and healthy, and keep our plant healthy. You do have to be careful though, because these pebbles do kind of like roll around, and they will, you know, they will kind of squish your plant a little bit. So you just generally just be a little careful. And it doesn't have to be like ultra perfect or anything like that. Okay, you just want it to, you know, you want it on there. Okay, so something generally like this. This is fine. All right. Just gotta make sure that we don't kill a little seedling in this rock. These pebbles they're moving around, so that is something to kind of be a little wary of. Is the pebbles? The pebbles have a mind of their own, but that's all right. Okay. That's it. The next step I'm going to do is we need a sock. All right, so I might better use this sock. This is from a transplant. So we're going to use this sock right here. And the reason we use socks again is to keep light out of our containers. Okay, we don't want crazy light getting inside our containers or anything. Okay. So we just go ahead and go up with the sock. Just kind of put it on there. Make sure it's covering everything. I'm going to have to remove some of these pebbles because some of these pebbles are starting to hit the plant. And okay. Next thing we do is we always label. Always label. Okay. So I think this is romaine lettuce, and today is the 15th. Okay. And then we're using Am I using Orca? I am using Orca, so we need to write that as well. I almost forgot there. Let me get my writing utensil here. I got stuff everywhere. Well, it's behind me the whole entire time. Okay, so we do romaine. Then we do today's date, 1/15/26, and then I just write Orca. Okay. There's our label. There's our new plant. There's its reservoir or its container, and that is it, guys. That's hydroponics. Okay, this is the most basic hydroponic setup that you can possibly do. Okay, it works. Okay, just the key thing I want you to realize in this video right here is you don't need anything expensive to do this. Okay, the most expensive thing that you're going to invest in is your nutrients. The pH and pH down, it's not too expensive. It's $20 or $30. And if you want to invest in a good pH meter or an RO filter, that might cost you a little bit of money. But other than that, nothing crazy expensive. Okay, you could probably do this whole thing for $50, $50 or $60 if you already had mason jars. Okay, honestly, it's super easy, super simple, and it's effective and it works. However, I do want to say before we end this video, Kratky method is only good for certain plants, and it's only good for a limited number of plants. Okay, the problem with this method, and it's a great method, especially for beginners, and it's a great method, especially if you only want like one or two containers or something like that. The problem is the scalability of this method. Okay, this method does not scale well. So what do I mean by scalability? Well, I mean that if you wanted 100 lettuces, you would have 100 different containers that you would have to maintain. Okay, that's not good. You don't want that. Now, if you're only doing like I said, maybe 10 containers, Yeah, sure, you could probably do 10 containers and it's not going to be that big of a deal, okay? But once you start getting more and more and more, especially of the same type of crops, you know. So if you're doing 10 lettuces, I'm going to tell you right now, do not use this method. If you just want to grow lettuce, do not use this method, okay? Get you a NFT system or something like that, where you only have to deal with one reservoir, okay? Now, if you're doing different stuff, like maybe you're doing 3 lettuces, you're doing 2 spinaches, and you're doing some maybe a pepper and some broccoli or something like that, by all means, this method is fantastic and it works, and it's cheap. Okay, so I'm not knocking this method. I use it. Okay, I use 3 different methods in my house right now. Okay, I use the Kratky, I use an NFT, and I use DWC, and all of them have their own purpose. And I would never put my lettuce in a DWC container, and I would never do 100 lettuces in a Kratky setup. Okay, so just be wary of that. Is that as you start to grow and as you start to get comfortable in hydroponics, it becomes a little bit of addiction, and you're going to want to grow more and more and more. And you need to think about, the crops that you're growing. Okay, you don't want to grow peppers, you don't want to grow tomatoes. You can, okay, but you don't want to. And the reason you don't want to grow some of these bigger plants in something like this is because you're going to be feeding that thing a lot, and I mean a lot. Okay, so think about the type of plant that you want to grow. Okay, then ask yourself these questions: how often do I want to feed this thing? Okay, if you're thinking about a tomato plant, pepper plant, cucumber, or medicinal, you're probably going to be feeding it a lot. Okay, think about the container. Okay, do you want a small container? Do you want a 5-gallon bucket? Do you want, whatever container that you have? All right, so think about these things before you put one together. Now, if you just want some lettuce and you're just like, hell with it, I don't care, I just want to have a couple of things growing, then by all means, the Kratky method is definitely for you. All right, so if you found any value in this video, please give me a thumbs up, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff if you want to. And if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please feel free to leave them down below. I do respond to all the comments, okay? And until next time, show me your garden. Bye, guys. Thanks for watching.